As we covered earlier in the show, the souring of South Korea-Japan relations was one of the top issues in the past year. Ties hit a nadir in the summer when Tokyo introduced trade barriers in an apparent response to a ruling by South Korea's top court in 2018 ordering Japanese companies to pay reparations to wartime forced labor victims. Tensions escalated and it almost led to Seoul pulling out of a bilateral military intel sharing pact. But as much as we talked about these developments, what was often lost was the perspectives of the forced labor victims themselves. And that's why we're naming them our Newsmaker of the Year for 2019. We're now joined in the studio by Mr. Kim Gi-nam, a lawyer who helped represent two of the victims, writing a petition to the United Nations to help tell their story to an international audience. Mr. Kim, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me here today.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in the forced labor issue?
My name is Ki-nam Kim. I'm the counsel for the victims of the forced labor during the Japanese illegal occupations when they submitted the petition to the United Nations. I'm chairing the International Solidarity Committee of Lawyers for the Democratic Society, known as Minbyeon. And also I'm the activist and the director at Asian Dignity Initiative based in Seoul, Korea, with the aim to support the victim of human rights abuses in the conflict areas across Asia. Currently, I'm working on documenting the genocide against Rohingya populations. I'm trying to bring those evidence of the genocide to international forums, such as not only the UN human rights bodies, but also the ICC and ICJ. And a colleague of mine at Minbyeon once told me that the victims of forced labor felt like guilty when they, watched the current conditions, the tensions between two countries, because of their lawsuit they filed in the court, and which makes me angry or upset.
The victims felt sorry for what's going on right now,
Exactly.
the tensions, okay.
And then I thought I should do something about this. And, the part of the mandate that we're doing at the Minbyeon is to bring the cases to the United Nations in order to, advocate the rights in the international arenas. And I knew that in the international, particularly the UN human rights bodies has recognized the comfort of women issues in that mechanisms, but never dealt with these issues. So we thought it is important to employ these mechanisms.
Sure, on an international scale, the comfort women issue, I think many people will be very aware of, but with the forced labor issue, they might have less knowledge about that. Can you, before we go on to the United Nations petition, can you tell us a little bit about the victims you represent? What kind of people are they? Can you tell about their experience under Japanese colonial rule?
Well, they're quite old, over 90s. They're one of the most courageous individuals I ever met. They are the only two individuals among, conservatively speaking, at least 200,000 people who are conscripted in fraud or under duress during the Japanese colonial occupations. Unlike the promised working conditions, they were subject to slave-like conditions. They were exposed to harsh and dangerous environment at the workplace. Also, they were subject to severe physical violence. They even tortured. And they were under de facto detention in the dormitories after work. And one of the victims I represented, her name was the Yangeum-deok 할머니, Yangeum-deok. She was born in 1931. At the age of 12, she applied a job in Japan. Initially, the school principal, when she was attending grade 6 in the elementary school, mobilized her and selected her as candidate to apply for that job. And she promised that she could would be able to attend middle schools in Japan once she got accepted. When she returned home and then talked about these opportunities to her father, who actually did not allow her to apply. But the principal actually threatened her father's security because for not being able to apply for the job. So these Yanggyeomdeok 할머니 at the time affixed the father's stamps and then give the consent to the form, and that's how she got
So she was
into the
misled,
system.
basically. She was told that there would be a job in Japan,
Yes.
and but unaware of the kind of conditions and the kind of work that she would be forced to do.
And also, when she went to the transfer to the Japan, she had to work in which had heavy industries in Nagoya, Japan, and then she spent like 8 hours or 10 hours a day from 8 a.m. Food was not enough. Her working condition was not good enough to
So that was one of the victims you represent. And there's another one. I'm not sure we'll have time to get into that because I want to talk to you about the UN petition that you put together. Can you tell us about that? What did you want to say in that petition and how was it received?
Well, the point I really wanted to make in that petition was that international human rights standard has to say about these issues. Many people thought this is about the victims fighting for their right against the perpetrators, in this case, the Japanese government and companies. But the particular victims need their allies. I need to have the international, the standard, including UN human rights bodies, to be their side. That's how I came up with these ideas, and basically we, employ the international human rights treaties and others, so that we were trying to emphasize what kind of the rights that these victims deserve to be, restored.
Getting their story heard on an international scale, obviously important. This issue with the forced labor victims is kind of, as we introduced, it's the victims themselves have been lost in the news, I feel, recently. We talk a lot about the trade restrictions and about the political consequences. How important do you think it is to continue to try to focus the perspective on the victims to help us better understand this issue going forward?
Well, that was the reason why I decided to involve in these issues. No one talks about what the victims wanted in these issues. Well, when we deal with these kind of issues, we talked about victim-centered approach, which is one of the internationally well-recognized principles in the transitional justice. When it comes to transitional justice, we talk about the truth-seeking process, and we're talking about the punishment of the perpetrators, reparations, and social reforms in order to prevent the non-repetitions. Repetitions. Without guarantee of this fall, we cannot reach any justice to be served. Without these falls, materializations, we cannot say that sustainable peace can be achieved. So the question is, whose justice and peace we are talking about? So, this is all about the victims' ownership of the process of transitional justice. But without placing them in the center of the process, we cannot say that we cannot say what they want, to resolve these issues concerned. Yeah?
Mr. Kim, we're quickly running out of time. Very briefly, can you tell us, if we were to have this conversation a year from now, at the end of 2020, what do you hope or expect to have changed, to have happened? What do the victims wish and hope to have changed by next year?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to expect at this moment, I have to say, like, we have to wait and see. But from the victim's perspective, I really hope that the Japanese government and companies involved issues official apologies to the victims. That's what they want. They do not want any, monetary reparations. What they want is the official apologies, sincere apologies. That's it. So I really hope to see that coming next year.
Yes, let's hope we can get that next year. But whatever happens with this whole Tokyo relations, trade restrictions, possible funds that people have talked about, let's hope we can keep we can keep hearing the voices of the forced labour victims themselves and moving forward. Thank you for sharing their stories with us today, Mr. Kim.
Thank you so much for having me here today.